Hi, I'm a physicist, well, physics teacher and math teacher. Currently just lost my supply job because the schools have closed, so I thought I'd try and do something useful and put it on the internet for anyone who's interested in science or maths, a student, or just someone who's not really studied for a long time. And I'm going to show you some basic maths on how a virus can spread. We're going to look perhaps at things we know about the coronavirus. It's not going to be too accurate, but it's going to be interesting. I'll show you the kinds of things that can have an effect. And I'm going to use a spreadsheet because spreadsheets are a wonderful way of doing lots of complex maths very simply without lots of really hard equations and calculus. And a spreadsheet can be used to model something like, well, time, should we start with? And if we start with the time at 1, and then we can get it to add a number to the day before as we go down the spreadsheet and just get it to count. Now what I'm going to put in here is time steps. So this is effectively how are we going to calculate the increase in time, and we're going to start with the time step of 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into this cell here and we're going to say, look, equals, and then we click on this one. We're going to look in G4 and look what the time was yesterday, and then we're going to add this number to it. Now this is where we have to be slightly clever, because when we paste this formula down, G4 means that if I put the formula below, it will look in G5 next time, and when we go to G7 it'll look at G6, and it'll look at all the numbers above. But if I put dollars in, which is dollars D, and then dollars 7, what that means is if I copy and paste this formula down, look, as I click in any of the cells, equals G8 is in G9, and so it's looked in this cell, but because I put dollars in the original formula, it's always going to look at D7, it won't go to D8, D9 and so forth. It will always look in the same number. So we've just got a spreadsheet to count for us 13 days. Now I think this virus is probably going to take 2 years or so. So we'll go down, what should we count up to? 800 and see what happens. Now, excuse me if I cough. I may have something. Let's hope it's not corona. I'm going to put this over here. We're going to have a population. And a population is a number of people, and I'm going to start it at 67 million because I live in the UK, and that's our population. And I'm going to have here infected people. Now, infected people are the number of people who have the coronavirus in the UK. And I'm going to start by putting 1 infected person in. Okay. Now, we're going to have a look at some new infections. So, how many new people are going to get it? So, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put in a formula. I'm going to look at how many people have got it, the infected people, and I'm going to multiply it by a number, and that number I'm going to put in this cell here, but I'm going to put dollars in it so it always looks in this cell, and that's going to be our infection rate. Basically what it means is what percentage of your cases one day do you get the next day, and I'm going to call that the infection rate. Now, I remember last week looking at some areas of Central Europe, and it was about 0.3, which is pretty alarming. So for every 1 person that gets it, you get 0.3 people the next day. So if you had 1,000 infections in your country, then you were going to get 300 the next day. And then our infected people is basically our what we had yesterday, and we need to add our new infections. But there's more to it than that. But let's just do it like that so far. So our infected people are what we had here, So we're going to go equals, and we're going to add new infections. So 0.3 people, but we can't have 0.3 people, but it will go through as we get bigger. So let's just copy and paste the new infections down and see what happens. Up to 875 days, and let's just infected people, copy and paste that down. And something's gone wrong. Oh no, we've got massive numbers and our computer didn't like it. Gone very small, hasn't it? Infected people. That's because I made a mistake. I said plus J5. I needed to add this, didn't it? So it's equals. So look at the one above, and then we're going to add J5 plus. If we put J5 in here. So let's have a look at that very slowly. We had one infected person. The next day we had 0.3 new infections, and that makes 1.3. So the next day we got 0.39, 0.39. So that gets quite a few people quite quickly. Now, again, this is dropping infected people. I don't know why. We've got this. That's because I didn't copy and paste this formula down. Let's copy and paste this formula down. See what happens to the bottom. You'll see it's quite easy to make mistakes on this. There we go. So after 8 days, new infections 1.18. That's new infections a day, and our total infected people are 8. After 21 days, 57 new infections a day. 247 people have it. Day 50, 500,000 people have it. 114,000 people, new cases in a day. So that's quite a lot, isn't it? That's an alarming spread. In fact, if we just plot a graph of this, there's our graphs here. It all happens very quickly on about a day. Well, it goes massive, absolutely enormous. It's exponential growth. It's really quick. Let's just see what happens if the infection rate. We've got it at 0.3. At the minute in Europe, we're getting about 0.2. So let's just see what that does to the figures on day 50. So on day 50, we have the best part of 500,000. Hang on, I'm just trying to do a formula while I'm zooming in on that. So, can we zoom? It's not letting me. There we go. Day 50, with an infection rate 0.3 increase in a day, gone from about 500,000 total, and about 114,000 new cases. We have put that at 0.2. Let's see where that takes us on day 50. 9,100 cases, 1,500 new ones a day. Let's do that again. 0.3. So that means 10 people effectively affect 3 in a day, or 100 cases, 30 extra people. Day 50, we go from having 500,000 cases and 114,000 in a day. If we take that to 0.2, then we have 10,000 cases and 1,800 on day 50. So, if you're a person with it, if you infect 3 people instead of 2 a day, or 0.3 instead of 0.2, you can see the massive effect it has. on the spread of the virus, which is why the infection rate is so critical. How long does it take before it's hit the whole population? Infected people, we want, what's this, 48 million? No. 45,720,000? No, it's so quick, it's unbelievable. 77 million by day 87. Staggering. 116,000. Goes up rapidly. That's 1,004,000. 12 million. Sorry, is that 12 million? I can't quite see because of my eyesight. 1.2 million. 6 million. 19 million. Here we go. 69 million. Day 103. Everyone has got the coronavirus in the nation of 67 million people with an infection rate of 0.2. So you can see how incredibly quickly this is going to spread. Now, it isn't quite like that. It's a little bit more complex. It's a lot more complex, but I'm just going to make it a little bit more complex. Because you do get better, or most people will, hopefully. So we are going to get a number of people who are cured, and we are going to get a number of people who've died. And how do we do that? Well, we say this. We need a death rate. And sad as it seems, now this is variable in different countries. Unfortunately, it's very high in Italy, but the percentage of their people who've got the disease who are elderly is a lot higher than, say, Germany, where more young people have got it. So the death rate's quite different, but the figure we're given at the minute is 0.35. So of these infected people, these total number of infections, we're going to have a death rate, unfortunately. And morbid as that sounds, now we can do death rate per day, or we can do cumulative death rate. I think really we'll look at how many people died today. Actually, I think that would be a useful way of looking at it. So, died today. Now, how do I do this? I'm going to go down to day 14, because the people who get the new infections, I'm going to say it takes 14 days to die. I don't know if it does or not, but let's just say it does. So I'm going to put a thing in here saying that every new person who got the infection 14 days ago, 0.035 of those people are going to die. And I'm going to copy and paste that down. And that gives you the death rate. And you can see it takes until day 29 before we start getting people dying. But then by day 48 we've got 3, day 58 21, day 64 63. Now you'll see my figures here. I've got a death rate of 63. It's given you 19,000 with the virus. Now in the UK, what have we got? 158 deaths. That would suggest that 50,000 people actually have it, and that fits in remarkably closely with what I was told on the news this morning by the Director of Health. They looked at the number of deaths and said, well, it's likely 50,000 people have it at this stage. All of this from a very simple spreadsheet. So you can see how the math is starting to work. But you're also going to have cured today. So actually that was died today, not total deaths. We need to really have total deaths. So that's how many people die in that day, and then we need to, well, equals, we need to look at total deaths. Well, we're going to start at 0, and we're going, we're going to put equals. We're going to look at that total there, and we're going to add how many people died today. And then if we copy and paste that down, then that will give us total dead people. What a terrible thing to say, but that's the science of it, and that is the truth of this awful situation. So 0.07 people died there. You start going down to the figures, 44 people died there, but 265 in total. Now there's a positive side of this, in that there will also be cured people. And what that means is people who had the virus, who've come out the other side 14 days later and are no longer ill. So if these people up here who got it, what did we use? We used J5, so we went to this number here. If those new people who were infected J5, is it? Let me get this right. J5. Well, if 3.5% of them died, or 0.035, then 9.65 of them are going to be cured. That doesn't seem right. 0.965. So 0.2 people infected, so that was 20. 19.3 got better. 0.7 died. So we're going to have a cured today. And what that means is 14 days after they got the infection, that's the number of people who actually were cured of it. So let's paste that down. There we go. So we have some statistics there. We have new infection. We have infected people, and that's the total. What we're using, we're just adding that on. That's infected people. Yeah. We're going to insert another column here. So we have our how many people died today, total deaths today, cured today, and this is infected people, and I'm going to put in there total infections. Now the thing is that the total infections won't affect how many people get infected, because some of them will have been cured and some of them will have died. So we are going to have a current infections table, and that tells you how many people on any particular day will be infected, and that's very important because it's the current infections times by the infection rate that will give you how many people can catch it again. So what does the current infection equal? Well, it's quite interesting, isn't it? I guess the current infections is how many infections we had, and we do need to take off the number of people who've died and the number of people who have been cured, and there's a kind of 14-day time lag, if you like, from that. So what I'm going to do here is the current infections is going to be, well, actually I'm going to put it in this column here. So let's just say it's the total infections, yep, and it is going to be take away how many people have died today because they can no longer affect anyone, and how many people were cured today because they can no longer affect anyone. So that's our current infections. I don't see how that can be bigger than total infections, but it seems to be, so let's see what we've done wrong there. The total infections are hang on, so equals our total infections, yep, and we're going to take away how many people died today. Or do we want to do the total? We have actually we need a total cured before we do this. So total cured, thinking about it, starts at 0 equals 0 plus how many have been cured today. Let's paste that down. There we go. Okay, now at the minute we're still working out our new infections based on our total infections, but that isn't really what we need to do. We need to work it out actually on our current infections. So our current infections are going to be how many people are totally infected. So how many people have been infected, total infections. But we do need to take off that total who have been cured, because clearly they can't give it to other people because they've been cured. And also we need to take off the number of people who died because they can't pass it on either. And it should be a little bit smaller, and it is, and I'll copy and paste that down. Okay. But I then need to change my original formula because my new infections, I'm just going to put I'm going to change the formula at this point because suddenly we've started to get current infections isn't total infections. Now our new infections, we've done R20, which was R20, which was this cell here. Okay, but we haven't taken into effect that some people have got better and some people have died. So we do need to change that formula. We could probably change it to here. $D, $9 is still our infection rate, but R18 is now current infections. So this one here, it is going to be S14, isn't it? S14. What's that done? Is that S14? Which figure is that? That is if I just click in, is that S? Is that 14? That's S18. S18. I do apologise. I've made a mistake there. Let's go. S18. Let's have a look at that. See if that makes a difference. And then if I go where I type that in and copy and paste it down, look. Let's see what that's done. So we have got new infections, which are based on our current infections, and we have our total infections, and you see how it builds. Now let's just plot a graph of that. Actually, if I get rid of these two, move them up, delete, and delete this, it will put titles on the graph for me, which is good. So what have we done? We have let's insert graph. Let's have a look at that. That's not worked. Let's try this again. Control, 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 control. Let's have a look at this. No, it's not doing it as I want. Insert. Let's try that, shall we? Ah, well, there we go. It's taking up to days 841 before things really kick off, but it is logarithmic and therefore we're not going to see the whole graph. So let's just move that to the side. Let's just go back to our graph. So we've got time and infection rate and death rate. Let's just have a look at this model. On day 50, 777 new cases. Died today, well, 3.2. But you can see 598, what's that column there? Cured today. New infections are going massive. What I'm going to do is I'm going to split the screen. What will that be under? Page layout? Review. I haven't been on this for years. Format. Split. Won't let me. I don't know why. That's very, very sad, isn't it? Let's see if I can split it somewhere like here. Split, yes. Okay, that's quite useful, isn't it? Let's get rid of this split here. Actually, we'll put the split over here, look. And then we can start looking. Day 50. New infections 777, died today 3. Total deaths 21. Cured today 90. Total cured 598. So when you start getting a cured rate after 14 days, it doesn't go up quite as rapidly, actually. In fact, there's a lag, isn't there? Because you're starting to get people who are better. But even so, by day 85, you've got 6,000 deaths. In total, you've got 93 people who died today. Your new infections are at 230,000 a day. So it's still, it just delays it slightly, but it's still a crazy situation. That's an infection rate of 0.3. If we put it to 0.2, if we put it to 0.3, well, day 50, 634 people dead. Cases 110,000 by day 50. So you can see the effect that the infection rate has. Let's put it down to 0.1. 0.1, so you only infect one person for every 10 people who've got it. well, day 133, you've only got 118 infections, new infections in today. You've only got 51 people die, but you still get to the stage where day 367, you've got lots of people dying. But of course, I haven't given you the whole picture here, because the new infections, let's put our rate back at 0.2. That new infection rate is also dependent on one other important factor, and that's basically how many people have had it and died and therefore cannot catch it. Cannot catch it again, particularly the people who are cured today, because what that means is that, you know, if half the people have had the disease, if you had an infection of 0.2, well, it's gone down to 0.1 because only half of them can get it again. So what we do need to do now is we need to look at our population, and we need to take off how many people have died today. So our population, I'm going to put it here at 67 million. But then I'm going to put in a formula equals, we're going to look above, and we're going to look across here to, well, died today. So where we're putting it, we're putting it in this box here. Which box are we putting it in? We're putting it into this one here, which is number 17. How many people died today? Well, that amount. So we need to take that off. So equals that, take away that. Has that worked? Equals that. No. Let's try it again. Equals the figure above, take away how many died today, which I think is L17, that one there. And then if we copy and paste that down, as more people die, the population will change. So our population does actually drop, and you'll see it drops quite quickly down here. Over a number of days it starts wiping us out. But what we haven't done is we haven't factored into it the fact that there's a percentage of the population who we can no longer affect, who we can't give it to. And I'm gonna call that the immune factor. Actually, and the immunity factor needs to be here because it's going to change as we go down. Let's put it here. It doesn't matter where we put it. No, I'm going to put it after population actually. So what's the immunity factor? The immunity factor is a percentage, and we're going to give it a value between 0 and 1. And what it is what percentage of this remaining population cannot be infected? Okay? So what percentage of the population at any time can't get it because they've either already had it, or they have it, or they have died? Now actually, the total infections at any one time is how many people have had it, got it, that the people who got it fit into that data, and so do the people who have died. They're already into the total infection. So let's look at the immunity factor. Let's look at the population or people who've had it. Okay, so population who can't catch it. I don't know where that's gone. Has that disappeared? Hang on. Population who can't catch it. There we go. Now that is basically this number here, the population, take away the total infections. Now actually that's not entirely true, because we have to take off the people who've died, because the people who've died are no longer a proportion of the population, and we have to see how many people are alive, what proportion of them can actually pass it on. So this is our population. How many can't get it? Well, the population who can't catch it are equal to our total infections, but we do have to take off total deaths, because that's the number of people alive who cannot get it. There are some dead people who obviously can't get it, but that's the number who are alive and can't get it, and that's quite an important figure, and we're going to copy and paste that down. And obviously more and more people get it, that figure gets much bigger, and that has an effect. So let's copy and paste that down. So we have people who can't catch it, and that goes, and it's going to be very similar to the total infections, but as the death rate goes up, it becomes smaller. So these are the people still alive who can't get it. And then we have to say to ourselves, well, these are the people who can't get it. What is the percentage of the population, therefore, who can't get it? What percentage of the population can't get it? Well, that's very easy. It's this small number here divided by this big number here. So it equals this small number divided by the much bigger number, and that comes out with a tiny figure. Okay, now if that figure is very small, lots of people can get it, we actually need what we call an inverse relationship here. So I'm going to put immunity factor 2 in here. Essentially what I want to do is I want to put equals 1 divided by that number. What have I done here? I want equals 1 divided by this number here. No, that is not what I wanted to do. I'm speaking rubbish. It's 1 take this number here. Has that done it? I did not put the equals in. Let's try that again. It's 1 minus this number here. Now that number is very close to 1, and that's because nearly everybody can get it. Only 12 people out of those people can't, and that effectively is what percentage of people can get it. This is the percentage of people who can't, people who can get it, and that's quite important. But that figure will change, because of course as more people get it, there are less people who can get it. So this is the herding theory that you may have heard about on the news that the government was hoping on. So now that number has gone to 200, which is crazy. It shouldn't really go bigger than 1, but our numbers have gone negative because we haven't quite got our figures right at the minute. So this is the percentage of people who can get it. Now, why 16? Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to our new infections, and what I've done is I'm looking at S18 times by D7. I'm not sure why I've got S18 there, but what I'm going to do, $D $7 is my infection rate, but I'm then going to multiply that by essentially this factor I've put in, this percentage, which is what percentage of people can get the disease, which is there. So my new formula went in there, and that means as more and more people get it, a smaller percentage will be able to get it. And let's see how this happens. When I finish copy and pasting this down, it should start affecting things. Now if I've done this correctly, when I finish, we should end up with a population about 3.5% smaller than we started with. And we do 64 million. We actually end up with about a 3.5% mortality rate, and pretty much everyone's had it. So the model works, and we can actually change some of the figures around and have a look at things. I mean, we could change the 14 days, we could change the death rate, we could change the infection rate. Now, let's just have a look at the figures then and see how many days things start going to. I'm going to put an infection rate of 0.2. Right, we've got it at 0.2. So let's look at day, let's just zoom in a bit more. Let's look at day can I do that split the other side? No. Can I undo the split? Yes. Let's try and do that again. That's better. So here's the time. Let's look at day 50. So on day 50, we're getting 777 new infections a day. 3 died today, total deaths 21. Cured today 90, total cured 598. Total infection 5,000. Current infections 4,500. Let's go down to day 70, which is not long away. It shows you how quickly these things are going to happen. 568 deaths. Died today, 84. Now let's go down to where Italy are. I think they've got about 3,000 deaths. Day 72. 100 died today, 138 tomorrow. No, sorry, actually that's the cured today. Let's go down to where Italy are, 3,000 deaths. Day 81. About 3 weeks ahead of us. 507 died today, 3,000 dead. Cured today, 13,000. Total cured, 93,000 have come out the other side. It gives you an idea of the figures. Now, total deaths. Let's see how long it takes for 50,000 people to die. With an infection rate of 0.3. It's on day 98. Okay. Let's change that infection rate to 0.2. Oh, it is 0.2. Let's change it to 0.1. So for every 10 people, an extra 1 person catches it. So half the infection rate. See where we go before we get 50,000 deaths. Oh, it's massive. It's massive, isn't it? We're on 307. Hang on, 5,000 deaths. Where are we? We're on day 239. So the infection rate is everything. If we can get that down, then this whole thing happens much more slowly. Let's have a look at a graph. So you can see the population getting smaller. Total infections going up. Total cured lagging behind that. Cured, where's the died today's yellow? We need to look at that because that's when the NHS is really quite pressed. Okay. Going to get rid of this graph. Cut it. Does that cut the graph? No. Can we delete it? I wish I could use this computer better. Cut. There, it's gone. Right, let's do another graph. So we're going to look at time, control against died today, against total deaths. And this is quite important because when someone's dying, they're probably in an ICU bed, a bed in a hospital that requires a lot of manpower. So insert graph, let's go here, see what happens. That's the wrong type of graph, let's do this again, cut. Insert graph, let's try this one. Okay, total deaths going up, died today, the peak. Well, I'm going to get rid of the died today, let's just look at died today, that's the important one actually. So we'll get rid of total deaths and we'll just do time, died today. And then we'll do insert. Do this graph. There you go. Now, an infection rate of 0.01. Well, that's not happening, is it really? It's been nearer. Well, let's look at it. Let's see the difference. With an infection rate of 0.3, we peak at nearly 200,000 deaths in a day. Between 67 and 100 days. That's per day deaths. Okay, let's put that down to 0.2. You've doubled that time. You halve the maximum to 100,000. Let's take that down to 0.05. You infect a 20th of the people you meet, or in one day if you have it, you only pass it on to 0.05. Well, I mean, it's just it's not noticeable. In fact, it dies off because the infection rate there is slower than the cure rate. Remember, the cure rate you get better after 15 days. So actually, you can kill this thing off. But 0.5, look, 400,000 deaths a day. 400,000 people. The NHS has to deal with that. 0.01. 14,000 deaths. 0.2. 100,000 deaths a day. 0.1. 14,000 deaths a day. Right, I'm going to say this quite loudly and very clearly. If we infect 10% of our people, 10% of our people a day, which is quite a lot, and at the minute it's been going at maybe 20%. If we can get it down to 0.1, the NHS has to deal with 14,000 deaths at the peak a day. If we keep it at 0.2, so you infect twice as many people, the NHS has to deal with 100,000 people a day at its peak. Now, I'm not a medic, but I know that in Italy the doctors haven't been able to save lives because they haven't had the resources to do so. 100,000 people dying of this a day means that there are not enough incubators, there are not enough doctors, not enough nurses. A lot more people will die. 0.3 where it started off 200,000 deaths. So if we can all do as we are told, it spreads it over a much longer time. We get a much smaller peak. It doesn't necessarily mean less people will die, because it will go through the population, possibly whatever. But actually, when I say it doesn't mean less people will die, it actually does mean less people will die, because ultimately we will be able to cater for the very needy and save lives. So this model, it works. This very simple Excel model shows you how, by looking at a death rate, a cured rate, a died today, a total deaths, a cured today, there's lots of faults in this, and you can change lots of things. But let's just change. Well, I'm not even going to go there. I'm not going to change the died today rate, because the death rate, how many people died today, because it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. But you get the idea. If that goes higher, it becomes very, very difficult in terms of the number of deaths per day. But that will go higher automatically if we get too many people ill. I will add one into this. The current infections is really quite important, because it gives you an idea of how many people need to be treated. So let's plot it against time. So we'll go time, and we'll go, where's current infections? Did I have that somewhere? I did, didn't I? So we're going to plot time against total infection. No, not total infections. Current infections. So time against current infections. Let's do our graph. I don't know what's happened at the end of this graph. It's clearly an error, and I've not got it right, because it should go down in a bell curve, but it doesn't. I'm not quite sure why. There's clearly an error somewhere, but you see the start and the dying off. 600,000 at its peak. And that's with an infection rate of 0.1. Let's put it back up to 0.2. 3.5 million people could all have it at the same time. And you can imagine the strain on the NHS. Let's say 10% of those need hospital treatment. You're talking 350,000 hospital beds. Let's just change the death rate to 0.08. Let's make it bigger. Does it affect things massively? No, it doesn't. 0.01 doesn't affect things massively. 0.035 is where we're going to leave it. It's all about this infection rate. Totally about this infection rate. If we can get that down, let's do it a bit better. If we can get that down, we get a much bigger window of opportunity. Only 600,000 people have it at the peak. Okay, so if you've been watching this and you're as a student, then go ahead and make up your own spreadsheets. Been watching it as someone who's just interested in what's going on, that infection rate is absolutely everything. Please do as you're advised. If you feel you may have symptoms, self-isolate, wash your hands very regularly, use hand sanitizers, stay out of the way of people, and take care of yourselves.